excuse me for my relatively informal attire. I'm doing a movie review for Doing It movie, and I have a list here because there's quite a few things that I actually want to mention in it. The topics that I'll be covering in here, and I'll go through for simplicity, I'll go through the list, and then I'll go back through it with the parts that I want to mention about it. So, topics from this movie include representation, the type of comedy, personal elements, unexpected twists, virginity, ignorance and innocence, cause and effect, themes in porn, informational and educational criticism, cultural influence on education, questionable kinks, psychological influence on sex and stages of development, understanding of the types of humor, masculinity of femininity or sexualization, timing, generational curses, unique uses of elements in storytelling, and utilizing psychology in storytelling. So this is the beginning of this part, I guess. So for simplicity, I enjoyed the movie. A lot of other people enjoyed the movie, and I'm pretty sure we all enjoyed the reasons. For me, because I am the type of person who watches movies both for the entertainment, but also the themes and the functional pieces, due to the fact that I had advanced classes from a young age in reference to writing and English. So I am almost a professional, if not a professional, in terms of understanding those things and also dissecting them. So that's what I do mentally, sometimes literally, but I digress. Let's start with representation. So I like that Indian and South Asian representation was at the forefront for this film, which I thought was funny, refreshing, definitely different. It's part of what would make the appeal actually spread more, because it's a unique story that is relatable because it's Americanized. Aside from that, it makes me think of, probably due to the same representation issue, of Harold and Kumar and American Pie. And Harold and Kumar was one of my favorites. Both of the movies were one of my favorites, so it's pretty funny that Kal Penn was actually on the tour. Aside from this, the reasons are because sexual liberation seems to be an important theme, particularly from cultures who may not have as much representation or communication surrounding issues that are important for human livelihood. At least in this case, we're talking about sexuality, which is something that affects every living human. So I liked that there were personal elements in there. It made me think of two productions specifically by Lilly Singh herself, which would be the club scene with Miss Chopra or Mrs. Chopra. And also it makes me think of the hangry scene, which was another personal production, which had to do with the person's anger issues and the things that they might say, or the types of things they might say, being prone to being mean. And it was interesting that it was used in the story as one of the critical points in terms of the development and the forward motion of the actual story itself. Instead of making it one-dimensional, it made it 2 or 3-dimensional. it wasn't the only thing in the story that did that, but that's partially the point. Another thing that I enjoyed was that the full clitoris, as well as the acknowledgement of female ejaculation, is a heavy and wonderful element to have included in the story. There are plenty of sexual elements and themes that were mentioned in here, but I'm going to try to stick to my framework in terms of how I'm communicating about it specifically. So, unexpected twists. Obviously, in the last scene, or in the post climax, that was definitely an unexpected twist. Mostly because of the way that individual had been hounding everyone the entire movie. And what's funnier is that I was quietly telling her to punch her in the face the entire movie. Every single time that she came on the screen and had something to say. Yes. So clearly that is an indication that we're on a similar level of reference to that. I like that was thoroughly communicated in terms of the actual purpose and theme, which would also be in reference to the other side of that issue, which would be the expectation coming from two sides of that particular issue, which are the mature person and the immature person, and which person is the person to be protected versus the one to not be protected because of that type of situation in the first place. One happens and the other one is something that should be mitigated against and known to not be a thing. So anyway, virginity wasn't interesting, so my take on this would be types of virginity, meaning mature people versus the youth. So in terms of virgins, I've known quite a few virgins who were adults at earlier times of my life, potentially now, but I digress. The point is that I am aware of what a virginal adult is like, and a virginal adult is first of all, I guess it's because at that point in my time in my life, I was also more of like an innocent type of person. It brings into, not question, but into focus the concept of how sex itself actually changes a person and their focus. And so I do think that is another theme or topic that should be explored more, because it does make a difference. Ignorance and innocence kind of falls into that same thing. Ignorance and innocence, of adults versus of children are obviously different, but there are different things within our human lives that lead us to be on either side of the spectrum of being aware versus being unaware. I love that it mentioned some of the themes in porn, particularly the same questions I'd be having. Don't ask me how I know or how I be on the porn site. Long story short, there are some pretty pervasive ideas on there, and or themes, and the issue is to the point where it either seems like it is something that is an under talked about, like hidden thing in our society, or it is something that is being pushed, which I think is more conspiracy-wise, because I'm pretty sure that the industry of porn goes towards what is most clicked upon. So even if at some point it was about shock or something else, shock or fantasy or whatever have you, it's the entertainers and the industry itself in that way also veer towards the things that get the most attention. So aside from this, informational criticism and the transmission of information in schools in particular, I thought was a good topic to touch on. The way in which we have previously either excluded different types of representation or certain types of information for the sake of preserving our idea of innocence versus what is the actual reality of that innocence is something that does need to be understood for efficacy and thoroughness, because without having that information, you just set everything up for not being put in the right order. Cultural influence on education was a interesting look into how people are potentially coming from different types of cultures, and those cultures, whether they are colonized, because clearly, I'm going to speak about India real quick. Clearly, India has a high population, so there's no lacking in terms of reproductive understanding in India. The issue would come down to the way that that information is given to the next generation in order to prepare them for those types of decisions and whatnot. So it is a problem to have a culture that makes it almost impossible to have good information about something. The next topic is about questionable kinks. There was a few issues there. It wasn't the part about anything other than the part with the at the diaper thing. It's mostly because I don't understand how someone's that's something on. And aside from that aspect, the rest of it seems like it's problematic as well in terms of actually performing with that and being with that in general as a person, and then also within the context of the type of act that was occurring there. The psychological influence on the sex life. So stages of development ties straight on into that, which has to do with the Oedipus complex is what it seems like that has something to do with that. Potentially with some type of some type of either damage or issue with disconnecting from the maternal influence, which in terms of feminine attraction is one of those things that is something that is an important topic to refer to specifically in sexual attraction, at least as far as modern concepts are concerned. The family unit and the cohesion of family, particularly the conflict between mother and daughter-in-law, and different familial issues in general, which indicate if you're into certain types of things, that indicates that you actually are having problematic, and women are not supposed to want to be your mother, but they're supposed to want to be your husband, or it can be conducive for a personal relationship to be like that, but not necessarily a sexual one. So understanding of the types of humor, there is a marked type of humor that came out in the 2000s, which could probably be associated with Jackass or some of the other shows that came out on MTV around that time, which is very important to millennials. We are very entertained by that, as well as the depth psychological content that came out of Adult Swim, such as Family Guy and later American Dad, which are known for their deep dives into the underground psychology and unspoken themes within American society. Not the things that people necessarily want, but definitely the things that someone might think. So it was well made in terms of including things that people would find funny, and true to Lilly Singh brand in terms of her humor. She is very good at pinpointing those things, and I think she's personally amusing. The masculinity aspect, or the coming out of the shell aspect, was an interesting element to include a masculine woman, particularly as a woman, to help teach the protagonist how to become more sexually empowered. The timing, back into the aspect of who this movie was made for, which clearly, if it says rated R, it was for 18 and up. Millennials, I think, would enjoy a longer movie or longer exposition on certain scenes. But in terms of modernity, for people who do have the attention span focus and issues, I think that it is right on par with the people who would need that to digest the information better. If that, that is based on science, so I assume that would be good for them. But in terms of longer form is something that also can be looked into if that's something that they want to do. I liked that it was talking about breaking generational curses. In this case, the generational curse would be the stain of colonized mindsets surrounding sexuality, and how that would communicate into and through someone's community to such a dramatic degree that so much false information gets passed around. There was a unique use of elements in storytelling. The one that I enjoyed specifically was how the vibratory signifier became the tool to communicate the progress of the internal growth of the main individual, who is known as Maya. And last but not least, utilizing psychological aspects in the movie to communicate growth, which can be in movie or in real life, which would be the utilizing of Jacques Lacan's signifier, which is the phallus, and quite literally in this case. The epiphany that they had, though it was put through a personal screen, meaning and showing what would be the use of a signifier in the first place, which is an excellent starting and opening point to start to communicate the power of imagery and the ways in which imagery brings upon growth in another person's life. So, hopefully that this was a significant review, and I very much so look forward to more movies made by this creator.